Okay, spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you about how I noticed the carbon spoiler on our Tesla Model 3 Performance was starting to come detached and how I fixed it. So stay tuned. Hi, John here. A confession right off the bat, really. I'd already started to repair the spoiler on the Tesla. Then my wife, Jill, said, that would make a good video for your channel, which she was 100% right about. But then I'd already completed almost all of the tasks. Thankfully, I did take lots of photos as I was doing it and a few video clips, so I'm going to use those to tell the story. So I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, when washing the car about 6 or so weeks ago, I noticed that one side of the carbon spoiler on the boot lid had a bit of play on it, and I could see daylight through it where it was supposed to fit sort of nice and snugly against the bodywork of the boot lid. And when I pushed it, I could feel some movement, and it wasn't a great amount of movement, but it was on the last sort of 4 to 6 inches of the spoiler on the passenger side at the very tip where the spoiler narrows. And when I pressed on it, I could see and feel quite a bit of flexing, and there was a fairly large gap, I guess about 1/8 of an inch, so 3 to 4 millimeter of play. And when I sort of pressed against it and it pushed back into the bodywork of the car. And I knew then that it wasn't going to fix itself, and it was only going to get worse over time, and it would need to be dealt with at some point in the future. Fast forward to a few days ago, and over the past month, it's been really, really hot here in the UK, which is a bit of a shock in itself. Sunshine day after day. And as a result, the car sits on the driveway and therefore heats up during the course of the day. And this time of the year, the sun hits the driveway for the majority of the day, from sun up to sunrise, sunrise to sunset even. And that's fine for the interior of the car, as I've got the overheat protection option turned on, which ensures the interior doesn't get over 40 degrees C or 104 Fahrenheit. But the outside paintwork gets very, very hot, and certainly very hot to touch by the end of the day. And a couple of days ago, one late afternoon, I had another look at the spoiler and noticed there was an even more movement along its length. The movement had sort of expanded, I guess, and it was almost halfway along the entire length of the spoiler. We'd been out in the car earlier that day, and I guess that may have helped it lose some of its adhesion. You know, the combined wind buffeting and bumpy roads, general jar and knocks and bumps from driving. But I also think it's actually very easy to use the spoiler as a handle when you're shutting the boot. Even though there's an internal pull handle in the boot lid, one on either side, it's quite tricky to get the force and sort of momentum correct to close the boot by just using that pull handle. And I often find I have to start with a pull handle and then adjust my hand position to push against the number plate to continue with the close and completely close the boot. And it's actually all too easy just to put your hand on top of the spoiler and pull the boot lid down to close it. And whilst this method is effective in closing the boot lid, it adds quite a considerable strain to the spoiler and its fixings, and I'm sure it causes flexing and weakening of the seal between the boot lid and the spoiler. And that's something we've both taken on board, Jill and myself, and adjusted our boot closing habits as a result. Anyway, back to the partially hanging off spoiler. I decided the best course of action was to remove the spoiler completely, because I didn't really want it coming off whilst driving, and thereby potentially losing it and having to buy another one. I've got no idea how much they cost, but I'm sure they'll be a pretty penny as they're carbon fibre. And I didn't want it start flapping around and damaging the paintwork as it, worked loose when I was driving. Or even worse, perhaps it came off altogether and caused an accident, I don't know, like spearing a cyclist through the heart or something like that. So, just too much paperwork for that sort of thing. So I thought the best course of action was to get it sorted. Thinking, okay, well, what's the best thing to do to remove it from the car? As I'd done the Chevy 57, I'd bought some plastic tools to help lever off the external trim on the Chevy. It was all stainless steel trim on the outside. So I thought, hey, perfect, they'll do. I took the tool, the plastic tool, and a microfiber cloth to act as a protection between the spoiler and the paintwork and the film, the PPF film, and eased the edge of the trim tool under the edge of the spoiler where it was loose on the passenger side, and works it along the entire length of the spoiler, gently using the boot as a kind of lever really to give me something to push against. And about 3/4 of the adhesive along the length of the spoiler gave way really easily without much force at all, but the last quarter, on the other hand, proved a little bit more stubborn, and it certainly didn't want to let go. They had formed a bond, basically, the bonnet, the boot and the spoiler. However, with sort of increasing and repeated pressure with the trim tool, I did actually manage to get it off. No damage to the car or the spoiler, thankfully, or any damage to my bank balance, so that's all good. The tape, I guess it was 3M tape that was used to fix the spoiler to the car, was very sticky on the last quarter, which was the tricky bit to get off. However, the remaining 3/4, which was supposed to be sticky, wasn't really sticky at all. It had a build-up of fine dust on it, which I'm guessing had reduced its effectiveness. And I suspect that as the gap between the spoiler and the car had increased, the dirt and dust had made its way in between the two and stuck to the adhesive tape, rendering the tape fairly useless. So great for collecting dust, but rubbish for keeping the spoiler stuck to the back of the car. Once the spoiler was off, the next tedious job was to remove the old adhesive tape from the spoiler. And during my research, I read everywhere about making sure that the two surfaces were squeaky clean before putting new tape on to get a good adhesion. Now, thankfully, there was none actually stuck to the car. There was a few smears which soon came off when they were cleaned. But the inside of the spoiler just was caked with the tape, basically, and the old adhesive. And I needed to get that off completely before I then put on my new tape. So I tried white spirits, no good. I tried acetone, no good. I tried WD-40, no good. And then I remembered that I had a tin of 3M adhesive remover, which I'd bought when I installed the weather stripping on the 57 Chevy, and I'd used it to clean off the excess glue. So I grabbed that, and it was still a real long job to remove all the old tape. I started off with a sort of a plastic narrow scraping tool to remove the foam backing from the tape, which then left me with a real sticky residue along the whole length of the inside of the spoiler. The tape was really well stuck to the spoiler. Unfortunately, it just wasn't as well stuck to the boot of the car. So once I'd broken out the adhesive and the M3 adhesive cleaner and the microfiber towel, it was a lot easier. And slowly but surely, after a couple of hours, I managed to clean and get rid of all of the residue from the spoiler, and had some very sore fingertips by the end of it. So one clean spoiler, one clean boot lid. So before putting on the new adhesive tape, I wanted to confirm the fit on the car. There's actually two plastic lugs, one on each side, pre-fitted onto the boot lid, which marry up to corresponding holes in the back of the spoiler. So I trial fitted the spoiler to make sure it was a good snug fit. And I knew that the locating lugs would be really handy when I got round to reattaching the spoiler to ensure it was in the correct position and evenly spaced across the boot lid. So the trial fit was successful, and the next step was to deal with the tape. So I cut and applied new strips of adhesive tape and trimmed them to the shape or profile of the spoiler. The tape I purchased was a 25mm wide high bond OEM approved adhesive tape. link in the description below. It was black in colour and it's very thin, it's just 1mm thick. But even so, I didn't want it sticking out and being visible from underneath the spoiler along the edge, and nor did I want it sort of preventing a buffer and stopping the spoiler from seating neatly when it was sitting against the body line of the boot lid. So the tape was 25mm, which was actually perfect for the width of the spoiler at its widest point. And the spoiler is sort of concave on the inside, so it gives a nice fit against the boot. I put the tape along the wider part and moved it all away to the outer edges. And this necessitated me trimming the adhesive tape with a sharp scalpel to the contour of the spoiler, which was actually easier to do than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a bit of a nightmare, but with a good sharp blade, it made the job so much easier. So I had my tape installed and bedded down firmly against the inside curve of the spoiler. I peeled off the protective blue backing film and then approached the car with the spoiler. I had already cleaned the boot paintwork, made sure it was nice and clean and got rid of any dust. I lined the spoiler up against the locating pins and pushed home firmly with the spoiler. I kept the pressure evenly across the whole width of the spoiler for a few minutes, and I was running my hands up and down the length of the spoiler to ensure sort of even pressure and a nice tight snug fit. It's now actually fitted better than the factory fit, and it fits along the entire length of the spoiler. It's really good contact against the line of the boot lid. I've kept my eye on it over the following few hours and days really, making sure it was a good fit. The instructions on the tape say that the adhesion of the tape gets stronger over time, so I'm actually hoping this will stay on. So there you go, that was my spoiler alert. So if you have one on your car, just keep your eye on it, and if you're finding it is a bit loose, then it might be sensible to pull it off and then reattach it before you lose it. So there you go. Hope that was useful. So take care, stay safe. I'll see you on the next video. All right, cheers, bye.